Your career is your responsibility, and you have way more control over it than you realize. Being in the driver's seat of your career can be super overwhelming. To help you overcome exactly that, our guest today is Richa Bansal, founder and CEO of Pinkcareers and senior advisor corporate strategy at Cistel. With a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi, master's in mechanical engineering from Purdue University, and MBA from Rice University, Richa has an extensive background in managing and growing her own career. With her organization, Pink Careers, Richa provides straightforward advice and coaching to help women pursue career success without feeling inadequate, overwhelmed, or guilty. Let's chat with Richa to learn more about her amazing STEM story and how you can control your career. Hi there, this is Prasha Dutra, and I'm passionate about helping you unlock your true potential in your science, technology, engineering, and mathematics career and beyond. Less than a decade ago, I moved to the US from India to live my American dream. I took my engineering career to the next level by starting my own consulting and coaching company while thriving at my 9 to 5 job. Money, time management, career planning, and personal growth are all things we'll discuss here. From expert guests and their stories to my own lessons, this show is an ongoing masterclass in how to believe in your brilliance and conquer your STEM career with confidence. Get a pen and paper and get ready for an education you wish you had in school. This is Her STEM Story, the podcast. Hi, Richa.
Hi, Prasha. How are you?
Very good. How are you? Thanks for taking the time this Sunday afternoon to talk to us.
Thank you for inviting me to talk to your community.
Yeah, this is so great. So, first of all, I would love to know, where did you come up with the name Pink Careers and what does it stand for?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So I had been contemplating a name for my business, I don't know, for weeks at end. And then at 11:30 in the night one time, it just suddenly came to me. Sometimes things just come to you and you know that's the right name. So it just came to me, Pink Careers. That's what I should call my company. And I called a friend in India and like, okay, I'm thinking about starting a business and this is what I want to name it. And she's like, go for it. And so that's kind of where it came about. It was the domain was actually not on sale, so I had to pay a premium to get the domain, but it just clicked for me. And I have to say, many people have wanted to talk to me just because they like the name and they find it so unique. They're like, we've never heard a name like that, and that's the reason why we wanted to know what Pink Careers is all about. And I want to say Pink Careers. The reason I named it Pink Careers was not necessarily because it stands for women, like pink is women, but more so because pink is so stereotyped, and I wanted to remove that stereotype. Like, okay, if something is really you know, considered a stereotype, you want to be able to step into it and dispel all myths that surround pink, right? For me, pink is power, poise, passion. That's all these wonderful acronyms, wonderful adjectives that pink stand for, that women are for, right? And so pink is anything to do with owning your career. That's what pink is about.
I love that. And coming from, like, I love pink. I don't know if you noticed. But yeah,
I love all colors, but pink is my favorite.
I know. And then it has to be these certain shades. But I mean, pink also is, I mean, for me, it's such a important symbol because I spent my high school in Jaipur, and so Jaipur is the pink city, and I think
I come from Jaipur.
perfect. High five. So all for Pink City, right? So when I was doing my branding too, like I was trying to like get all the icons from like Jaipur and like trying to include those because it's such a big part of our where we come from, and sometimes we're so focused on where we're going that it's hard to like like keep in touch with our roots for sure. So that's another thing that comes to mind when I hear Pink Careers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, we have to be connected to our roots. Like that is what has defined us and made us who we are right now, right? So just pink has so much symbolism attached to it, and it's just so important to me from that standpoint.
Yes. And so, with that, talking about roots and talking about backgrounds, one of the things that has struck with me the most about your story and has actually stayed with me a lot, and I tell people like this is how I like to introduce you. And I think the Indians listening to this will also resonate with this, is just how decorated your academic life is. And, having been myself being an IIT pursuant and knowing all the things that go into it, it's just an absolute honor to be talking to you and to be watching your journey, past IIT and other things. And it's just, again, one of those, like, for me it's always a fan moment if I'm talking to people from these big institutes. I'm just such a, such an academic in that sense. But tell us a little bit about that journey, and also even before that, like, what got you really interested in becoming an engineer? What are your first memories of it?
Oh, thank you, Prasha. So I come from a family of engineers and doctors. So I think engineering kind of runs in our blood. My dad is a doctor. My brother is a surgeon. My sister-in-law is also a doctor. My uncle is an engineer. So like we getting into professional services, I think, was just a given for me. Was expected. Um, but growing up, I remember myself being a little bit of a tomboy, right? Like I wanted to get my hands dirty. I wanted to go out and play with the boys and girls in the street and go biking and try and break things and see how to fix it and so on. And so I think I really wanted to I do engineering just because I think that's what I saw around me growing up, and that's kind of what I was interested in. And then if you are in India, IIT just becomes like that thing that you aim for if you want to do engineering.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I studied hard in grade 11, grade 12. I sat for the exam. I got a good rank, and then it was time for me to choose the subject. And I wanted to do aerospace engineering,
Mhm.
but my parents kind of suggested it's better to do mechanical engineering, simply because mechanical allows you to build a broader foundation that you can then build upon on. Aerospace, not to say that aerospace doesn't give you that foundation, but aerospace is a little bit more niche. And in India at the time, this was 15 years ago, aerospace, I want to say, is still growing. Not very people were taking up aerospace. And I thought, okay, mechanical is a good choice. I was getting at a good school. So I picked mechanical and IIT Delhi. And I went for my placements, and a professor told me, you know what, girls don't take mechanical engineering. So why don't you choose some other field? This was a professor at IIT. I'm like, no, that's why I want to take mechanical engineering. So I
Now
was
I do it
actually,
even more.
so I was actually the only girl in my first year in mechanical engineering, a class of what 65 plus, and then another lady, she decided to switch from industrial to mechanical and joined me. But even 3 years before, I I got into IIT, there were only one woman each in the class, in the
Mhm.
mechanical engineering class. So still, at the time, 15 years ago, was still a field not very many women get into.
Yeah.
There's no reason why they can't. Now, it's not that we are hammering things away or you're really being very manly and hands-on. No, I mean, mechanical engineering is all also about thermodynamics and understanding pressures and electromechanical systems and all of those things. I think, again, mechanical engineering also have some sort of a stereotype attached to it,
Yeah.
which is not really the case. There was only one class where we actually had to hammer
Yeah.
away things, right? Like,
Which
we
was
had to
just
do
in first.
boundary.
Yeah, just in first year for us, and I think there was theory of machines for
Correct.
the
I mean, theory of
mechanical
machines
students.
also is a lot of drawing and then actually using your brain. It's more about
Yeah.
using your brain and doing the analysis, and less about actually uh,
Hands
being a
on. Yeah.
carpenter, hands-on. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so many common things in that. Like, I want to do aerospace, and I went to do aerospace
Hmm.
after I did chemical. But I went to do aerospace, and then I had to realize it on my own that, doing aerospace is going to, limit my opportunities in job search. Especially, I was doing it in America, so I wouldn't have gotten any jobs because you needed to be a citizen, you needed clearance for a lot of aerospace jobs. And so I switched to mechanical, and that's kind of what I
Hmm.
ended up doing. But same thing, like, less women do mechanical engineering, which is kind of sad, because if you think about mechanical, a lot of it is, as you said, design. A lot of it is deep thinking, creating something from
Correct.
nothing, solving complex problems. And I think that's just the essence of all engineering anyway. So whether you study a basic discipline getting into it, or you study something different, I personally don't know why we're still, like, carrying those stereotypes.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I did in my master's. When I came here to do my master's in mechanical engineering, I decided to do mechanical engineering because um, there's actually plenty of fields in mechanical engineering that you could pursue that bring you
Yeah.
closer to business, right? Like my ultimate aim was to be closer to business. And so when I came to Purdue to do my master's, I actually studied design for X. So how do you design for cost and design for sustainability and design for manufacturability? And so it's not what you would consider hardcore mechanical engineering, again, where you have to be very hands on, or perhaps where you have to get into, again, hardcore subjects in mechanical engineering that are related more to thermodynamics or hydraulics or whatnot. There's plenty of opportunities and subpaths that you could take in any field for that matter, whether it be mechanical, chemical, whatnot, textile engineering. We had folks who did textile engineering. And ultimately, I say engineering is a way of thinking, right?
Mm.
When you do engineering, it allows you to be more analytical, and it arms you with that analytical skill set that brings you closer to business and closer to solving problems. That's what engineering is about. It doesn't matter whether you do textile engineering or chemical or mechanical or whatnot.
Yeah, and it definitely doesn't matter whether you're a guy or a girl. Like, this is
Exactly.
so beyond me, because I think women make really good engineers just because, again, the ability to multitask, the ability to um, be inclusive in thought in general, right? Like thinking about other people, thinking about the environment, thinking about things that others may have missed in their pursuit of business, if you will. Like I always see women leaders being more holistic in their approach to solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are able to take a step back, not to say that men aren't, but women are definitely able to take a step back and take a more holistic approach to the problem solving. And then just allows you to be more empathetic to the situation at hand, whether it be related to the problem we are solving or
Yeah.
to the people who are helping us solve that problem.
Right. So you have such a decorated academic career, and then you come into the actual workforce. So what were the first challenges that you faced, even, again, even with, because a lot of times we graduate with these really great degrees and really good schools, and, our expectations have been built up to this, like, the world's going to be on my feet kind of thing. And then, we start facing these biases or problems at work. So what's your first memory of sort of feeling like, wait, like I wish they taught me this at school, or wait, like I'm not prepared for this, and then also like just this sense of not having control, because I think when we go from, like, again, a very strategic career, academic career or academic studies, when we enter the workforce, it's so like there is no plan, like, and I think that freaks out a lot of people the most. So how was that? Like, what was your first experience of like coming to terms with that?
So my first corporate role was actually after my master's when I decided to be a field engineer with Schlumberger. So I have a long history with Schlumberger where I wanted to get into the company. My then boyfriend, now husband, worked for the company, and so I'd heard enough about the 24/7 field lifestyle because he was a field engineer, and I wanted to do that. And so after master's, I actually got an internship with them in the technology center. Um, where they offered me a full-time position, and I said no, I want to be a field engineer instead. So off I went as a field engineer in Malaysia. I was working. So I remember, like, when you asked, like, first your first memory about being in corporate, my first memory was actually being in the workshop where we had these field technicians and I was an engineer. Okay, so as an engineer you would think that a lot of things because you've studied that in school, but that's not really the case. Okay. This field technician gave me my first job, which was, there were about 100 boxes of these very heavy metal clamps all packed together. And my job was to cut open those boxes, pry open the top, take out each metal clamp one at a time and dimension them. And we did that 3 days in a row, from, I want to say 8 in the morning to like 10 in the night. All I did was take out heavy metal clamps and measure them and dimension them. And I'm like, this is what corporate life is like. But I did that for 3 days. I did what the technician told me. And at the end of the day, those 3 days, I had a slight fever, but my technician told me, Richa, now you're one of us.
Mm.
And the lesson I really learned from it is, like, they tell you in the school about all of all of these technical skills, you may say that you were, and all of these theoretical skills, but they don't teach you the life lessons of working in corporate. And the first rule of that is respecting everybody and um, the quality and the experience that they bring, right?
Right.
And for to being a part of the team, you have to be one of them. Like, you have to
Mhm.
work with them on the floor. And that's the first lesson that I learned coming into corporate, that never ever think about yourself as somebody who is, just because you're an engineer, you're above you know
Yeah.
the lab technicians or the floor workers. You have to be on the floor to learn how to actually do things, to be
Right.
actually one of them, to be considered the in group.
Yeah.
That's what I would say is the first lesson I learned.
Yeah. I don't think I used anything from work, like from school.
Yeah.
First couple of years, I would think. But to your point, it's the same thing. Like, I spent my first rotation, um, because I also worked in manufacturing, spent my first rotation in a lab as a technician. Like, that's the role they give you. Like, because you're a graduate trainee, like, they give you all the roles.
Mhm.
And they would make me do these tests like all day long, right? Like, you're just burning cable, like next, like all day long, you're just burning it. It's a lot of fun, but it's like, wait, did I just go to school to do this?
I've had those moments, right? I mean, as a field engineer, sometimes I would be sitting, like, we had these rigs, and at the bottom level, you're sitting and completing certain, like, you tighten some screws on the top of the, like, the rig table or whatever, right? And then you have these oil dripping on your hard hat, and your nails are full of dirt, and your feet already have scrap marks because of the steel toe boots. And I guess you can understand. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, did I just go to school for that?
Yeah.
But then what you also
No.
understand is, like, your tools work in these hard situations, and your tools have to see, like, they're such rough handling, and there is, like, literally no space to have that screwdriver go in. Like, what were the engineers thinking, sitting in their on that
On
laptops,
their
right?
office.
How they were designing it. So we learn all of these very, very practical things about the products that you actually will be working on, that I would never have had I not actually
Yeah.
worked on those tools uh, in actual field settings.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love to call this show as like the master class of learning things that you've not learned in school and you wish you did. And I think
Mhm.
one of the things that you just mentioned is like this again, this regard for other people, and this sense of learning should not leave you. What doesn't matter how many degrees you have and how many
Yeah.
degrees you have from how many different schools. This sense of curiosity and learning is going to make you a really good employee, throughout your career, whether you're, just starting out or like moving on or transitioning, whatever it is. And I think so many times people forget that and
Mhm.
feel like, as much as yes, we're entitled to a lot of things, I feel like this just never let that become your like the sense of it. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, the way you conduct yourself at work should never be entitled. Like, it should always be curiosity that somebody knows more than me, and that's totally fine. Like, what you do with that information is probably what matters more, right? Than you
Yeah.
knowing everything.
Yeah, no, I think humility will take you long ways. Whether it's your first day on the job and you're trying to understand, like, how your manager's working style is, or how do you fit in and become the in group.
Yeah.
Um, or I thought I just lost you for a second. So
You're
yeah,
back.
I was saying that humility will take you a long way, whether it's your first day and you're trying to understand how your manager works, or how to be in with your peer group, or you're changing roles and getting into a new group, right? You're becoming manager. There's plenty to be learned from your teammates as well, like your reports as well.
Yeah. I love that. So, when we talk about taking charge of your career without feeling guilty or overwhelmed, let's dive deep into that. So, let's imagine like somebody who's listening to the show and they're like, "Wait, I've done everything, but my career is just not moving. My manager doesn't like me. I feel stuck. Like, I just don't know where to go next." So let's walk through the process of now what can this individual do to take charge of their career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've been talking about women being a minority in corporate leadership for a while now, right? And we know that there are two parts to the problem. One is all of the stereotypes that still surround us, all the macro problems that exist with corporate and society, and how girls are raised and women are raised. Like, that is one set of problems that need to be solved. But then I say you have to start with yourself, right? Like, all given all of these problems exist, you cannot change the world in a day. So what can you do to take charge of the situation, to make sure that your voice is heard, to make sure that whatever contributions you are doing are actually heard and seen by the people who matter, the people who are in charge of making those promotions happen, right?
Yeah.
So you have to take charge of your career. You cannot be blaming your HR. You cannot be blaming, oh, economy was bad and so I lost my job. Yes, economy was bad and you lost your job, but then what did you do to perhaps have a plan B ready? You
Yeah.
know, in a situation where a job loss was coming, or in, what did you do, what are you doing now? Like, it's okay to sulk for a week, okay, but then what are you doing now next to get next things lined up, right? So to your question around somebody who feels stuck, somebody who thinks who has done everything and the manager doesn't like them, I want to ask them a few questions. Really be honest with yourself and ask, have you really done everything to manage your manager properly? Like, that's the
Mhm.
first thing I say. And I really love talking about this particular topic because, oftentimes we say, oh, I had a bad boss and my boss doesn't like me and my manager likes this other person. I'm like, okay, but have you really spent some time understanding why, you feel that they don't like you? Have you really set your objectives very clearly with them, and are you delivering on them? That's first. And then if you're delivering on them, does your manager
Mhm.
actually know that you're delivering on your objectives? And does your manager actually know
Mhm.
that you're not only delivering on your objectives, but what you're doing is adding value in this way, right? So you have to
Right.
go a step further and not just talk about, this week I completed this particular analysis and this particular test, uh, but have you actually told them that this particular analysis actually saved us 2 months of development time, or this particular test that we have done has now de-risked the biggest issue that we had in the project,
Mhm.
right? So go a step further and talk about the value that you've brought in, right? uh, Also think about, all of the achievements that you're having. Have you talked about it in the bigger group? So to, have you done the work to identify your career stakeholders? That may be your manager, but they may
Mhm.
also be other people, right? They may be your functional manager, or perhaps your peers, that have some sort of an influence in the 360, if your company runs a 360, in how you impact the project and the environment around you. Like, so really help understanding that will help you move a step forward and getting out of that stuck situation.
Mhm.
Another thing I would say is, sometimes people feel that I feel really stuck. My manager has no time for me. They're busy doing this, and that, and they have not met with me. How can I even tell them like all of these wonderful things you're telling? So, in that, I would say, have you been a little empathetic and really thought about that your manager has a lot of things on their plate, and you are working hard and they are not paying attention to what you're doing? It's probably because they have a lot of pressure from their manager about something,
Mhm.
right? Maybe they are just being put in charge of a very critical client and they are just trying to figure out themselves as to what to do, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they know of somebody who's like a critical resource who's leaving the company, and they are trying to save this person, and they're not paying adequate attention to what's going on your side, right? And so then it's up to you to say, this is very, very important. Can I help? Like, I would love to help you with this particular thing that you're doing. Maybe that'll help you save some time. Or I have done this in the past. I can help you with this analysis. Have you offered help to them to really add value to them? Then they start to see, okay, this person can actually take charge. This person can
Yeah.
actually, add value. This person can actually suggest initiatives and deliver on them. And that all ultimately allows them to see that, yes, you are ready for that next step.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of work that people don't do, which is like this being proactive, being, as you said, empathetic, and just taking a minute to get their thoughts together. Because I think a lot of times we're just going from project to project, task to task, and then before you know it, it's 5 years later, and you're like, wait, why am I still in this role? Because most likely because you didn't prioritize. Your career, didn't prioritize the next steps, didn't take them time. So
Mhm.
for people who are really busy and going from project to project saying, yeah, Richa, it's really nice, thank you for letting me know that, but I don't have time, how can we carve out time to strategize our next steps? And then the big question that everybody struggles with is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I think
Hmm.
women especially are struggling a lot with that question, because one, they don't have sponsorship, mentorship, resources, tools. They don't have a boys club, a golf tournament, a trip. They're not invited to dinners. There's a lot of things that happen at workplace where they lose that, that person who's pulling them in and telling them this is next, this is next. So how do you address those two things? I think there are two questions, again, loaded, but one is like, where do I find the time to start strategizing? But then
Uh-huh.
most importantly, where am I going? I don't know.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is to start taking a seat at the table. Okay. And when I say take a seat at the table, I'm not just saying take a seat at the table in the meeting, the meetings that you're doing. I'm saying take a seat at the table in any conversation you're that's going on. Okay. So which means that just being an active part of the conversation that's happening. So if you're chatting with your peers, uh, having actively, deliberately thinking about, okay, like what can I learn from them in terms of what they are doing, their project, and that helping you understand, is that something that I would like to do, is that a skill set that I would like to build in the next 4 or 5 years from now, is this a place that where I want to be? When you meet with senior professionals and senior managers in your company, again, being deliberate about understanding and learning what took them there, and so again, that helps you explore, is that something that would be of interest to you, right? So all of these conversations essentially allow you to better understand if this is something that you would like to do, if this is a skill set that you would like to build, and are you really liking where they are at and the type of responsibilities and projects that they are managing. That's kind of what I mean by like taking a seat at the table, because when you start doing that, when you start being more deliberate, then you start understanding a little bit better about where you want to be 5 years from now, right? And where do you want to be 5 years from now? Think of it not in terms of the position that you want to be in necessarily, but in terms of the skill sets that you would like to gather along the way. Because when you start thinking in terms of skill sets, then you're able to better articulate, like, what skill sets you would like to gather next, and then talk to your manager about, okay, I would really like to gain some experience in this particular skill set. What do you think? How do you think I can do that? Right? And you can suggest, okay, I have a couple of ideas, perhaps I can shadow this particular person as this project is happening. I have a little bit of time that I can carve out for this particular project this way. You think that would be a possibility, right? Then you can suggest some ideas, and then you can also ask them, hey, what do you suggest? How can I develop the skill set? Because I think this is important for me. I really enjoyed this one little project where I was able to give sales input. So how can I become closer to sales? And what do you suggest I can do? So just understanding skills over what particular position you want to be, I think, allows you to better articulate where you want to be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would say is start thinking about things that are important versus things that are urgent, and kind of separating them out. Um, this is called the Eisenhower matrix. So, you
Yeah.
basically, what happens is, like, especially when you're in operational roles where you are in charge of day to day, making sure day to day is running smoothly, we often just get into this busy loop. We have to put out fires, and we have to just be busy, 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 and we start equating our busy with productive. But that doesn't always mean that you're working on important things.
Mhm.
So, like, starting to separate out the important versus urgent a little bit, and then spending some quiet time, perhaps even book an hour in your calendar a week. Like, that's what I used to do. I would just book an hour in my calendar a week to think about what are the important things this week and next week that I should be working on, which may include who should I be talking to, have that conversation about learning what I want to do, or is there a particular skill set that should be spending time on Coursera or Udemy and learning about? Uh, should I be seeking out some mentors and sponsors? Like, all of those things will then, like, booking that time with yourself will allow you to spend time on all of these things that are important for your career growth. Um, and we aren't able to think about them when just days passing by.
Yeah. I love that. I've used that myself. And I think what I used to do was Friday afternoons,
Yeah.
like literally, like I would book my calendar after 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. because mostly it was quiet and, there are not a lot of meetings, and using that time to just like using my whiteboard and just planning things, or setting it up with like a colleague, and, they can stop by and we just like dream on kind of
Yeah.
mode.
I mean,
How
I
about this?
love whiteboarding. I love whiteboarding, right?
Yeah.
And then this idea that you suggested, talk to your colleague, right? And so maybe you and your colleague can brainstorm and you feed fodder to each other. I think that's a great
Very
idea.
fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun too. But I also think like a lot of things that you just said, like having a voice, and just bringing up your ideas. I think it takes time to build up to that confidence in the beginning when you're just starting out. Some people may have more affinity to just, you know, be able to talk, because that's kind of some people may have that as a strength, and then others may not. And so what would be your advice to people who are, because what we found out, we did a research, not a research but like a quiz last year.
Mhm.
About 1,000 women in STEM participated, and it was really kind of interesting that about 70% of them were introverts, right? Like
Mhm.
70% of them ended up being very introverts, and very small percentage was the extrovert, kind of like your typical people that will stand up for themselves or say things that
Mhm.
they have on their mind. So for introverts, what would be your advice to them? They're saying, okay, I have the seat at the table, but I'm not comfortable saying things out loud. I struggle to get my thoughts together quickly, and then I feel like people are just talking over me, and before I can even think, because now I need my time to think, things have already progressed to the next stage. So
Mhm.
what would be your advice to those people, and how can they get the seat at the table?
So I want to say that speaking up is a learned behavior,
Mm,
right? And behaviors can be learned. It's a skill that can be learned. And so the really first step is to shift your mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So instead of
mhm,
saying, I've always struggled with speaking in groups, I always
mm,
hesitate to ask questions, think about, I can learn to speak in groups. I can be okay asking questions and they will not be considered dumb. I can learn how to voice my ideas articulately so that they are not cut off, or I can learn if somebody's cutting me off in meetings, then I can still continue to go on express those ideas. So first step is to really start thinking about, how can I shift my mindset from this fixed mindset to growth mindset. And affirmations help sometimes, like sticky notes, little sticky notes that you put on your laptop, maybe one sticky note at a time, that just say, I can learn how to speak up in meetings. That's the only sticky note that you can put on your laptop and go from there. And then that allows you to look at it a few times a day, especially if you have a thought that's coming to your mind and you're hesitating to speak on the meeting. Like, look at that note, and that allows you to kind of retrain your brain a little bit. And the second thing I would say is, start small.
mm,
Like, if you have always hesitated from speaking up in meetings, perhaps trying to speak up in a huge big meeting where you have big stakeholders may not feel very comfortable with to you. But there's no harm in starting small with your team meetings, right? Like,
mm.
when you have team meetings, the first thing that you should do, especially if you're online now, turn on your camera.
Yeah.
Like, that is the first immediate step that allows you to be part of the conversation, that allows you to be at the table. And believe me, when you are at the table, it is so much easier to speak up. When you're sitting at the back of the table, back of the room, it's just harder to raise your voice. It's just harder to butt in and speak up what you want to say. Take a seat at the table. Take a seat at the virtual table,
Hmm.
right? And then ask the question. uh, th- that's what I would say. Just, you have to start somewhere, and it will feel
Yeah.
awkward in the beginning. Second time it'll be a little bit better. Third time it will be much better, and fourth time, if somebody interrupts you, you'll be like, "Hey, I'm
I'm speaking.
speaking."
I love that. And I think one of the things that has helped me, and also some of my clients that I've worked with, is this what I like to do is this, this has stuck with me for some reason. But somewhere I read that Michael Phelps would imagine every swim before he swam, right? So he had videos, they would like make videos of him like beating the best time, and like they would, have these morph videos of him like beating these crazy times in swimming. So he would spend a lot of time visualizing that
Mhm.
swim more than swimming the swim, right? Like it's more important to visualize. So thinking about, okay, how will this meeting go? It takes
Yeah.
10 minutes, right? Like if I was to run this meeting, like visualizing what is going to happen, like somebody's
Yeah.
going to say this, somebody's going to say that, then what will I say? And I think this is so great because it gives you 10-15 minutes of time to process or even think about the things that these people will be asking, or saying or objecting. And
Mhm.
over time, when you're preparing for the meetings, then when it's time for you to say something, or even if you have a thing that is different than the group, you took a minute to
Mhm.
prepare. You'll be surprised. People don't prepare for anything.
Oh
It's
yeah.
crazy.
People go into meetings to talk about promotion and salary raises, and they don't prepare. Like,
No. And so just
mm-mm.
taking 5 minutes to prepare, like if I'm going to do this brave thing of stopping somebody, like how would I do it? And then what would be their counter comment? Thinking one step ahead is going to be so amazing, because now there are no surprises, because you knew that this manager was going to say something that now you have an answer for. And you feel a little bit more prepared. And then, as you said, it's a learned skill, so confidence also is a practice. You got
Yep,
to practice it. And the way you practice it is you bring all the arsenal, right? Like you come guns blazing, prepared, thought through. And then when you do express yourself, whether you're a public speaker or not, you took a minute, and
yep.
you have that confidence as well, especially for, I think, for introverts, because they like being prepared. And I think if you like being prepared, then be prepared. Like,
Yep, yeah, exactly. And there's one other thing that I would want to add, right? We always have to go with the mindset that the people around us want us to succeed.
Mm,
Like the people in
love it.
the meeting have called you because they think you have something to contribute. Otherwise, they would not call you to the meeting. So you are doing yourself and them a disservice if you're not contributing. Like you have
Mhm.
to always go with this mindset. Why are you working at this company? Because you have something to contribute. Why are you being called to the meeting? Because you have something to contribute. Right. And once you get your head wrapped around that, then you are not seeing them as enemy, or you're not seeing them as somebody who is ready to chew you up, right? If you
Yeah.
speak up, then you are thinking about, okay, I have something really valuable to add. And if I don't add that, then I'm not doing justice to my own work.
Yeah.
And I actually learned that very quickly, because when I moved from the field to back in the technology center, um, the first couple of meetings I was called, and I, for me, I'm a little bit of an extrovert, so I kind of had to work hard to make my mark in the field. So I did take a seat at the table, and then I
Mhm.
spoke up, and everybody stopped to listen, and they were listening for 10 minutes to what I had to say. And I'm like, okay, like I have something to say here. I'm only a year and a half in the company, and they're listening to the design inputs to the most critical architecture that I'm giving here, because I have something valuable to add. And so the next time I spoke up, and the next time, and then they would start calling me to bigger and more important meetings,
Yeah.
because when you speak up, they know that, oh, this person really has something to contribute. And then they will call you to bigger and more impactful meetings. And that's how you build yourself up.
Yeah. I love that. And one of the questions that adds to that is, after doing all this, a lot of people also feel that they feel a little guilty. Women do this all the time, either this guilty because I shouldn't ask for more, or because it's not my place to ask for more. How do we work around these negative emotions that may have been programmed, right? Like, in the sense that the way a lot of us were raised, or the way society looks at us, and even the stereotype of a successful woman is horrible on TV, right? Like, it's the worst stereotype you can have. So how can women, like, stop feeling guilty or overwhelmed? And I think overwhelmed, we covered a lot of that, like carving time out, having collaborative meetings, taking little steps can start helping you overcome the overwhelm. But when we think about guilty or negative emotions surrounding, when it comes to taking charge of our career, what would be your advice? Like, how can women work towards that?
I think one of the things that has really helped me in this area is to find a mentor, and finding a mentor who herself has been um, owning her career, somebody who is not very high up in the career yet, but somebody who's perhaps only a couple steps ahead. And the reason it had helped me tremendously is because then I could relate with them better,
Mhm.
right? And I could see that I could get hints around, and learn from also, like, how are they managing family while voicing how they want to grow in their career. And you know just all these strategies and tools that we were talking just a minute before we went live around, like, business, applies equally to corporate, right?
Yeah.
uh, Learning from others, again, listening and learning from others, especially mentors who are only a couple steps ahead of you, can really help you overcome that guilt, because you can see that they are in the same boat. They're not like 20 years away or different from you. And I think that has really helped me with mommy guilt that may have arisen on
Yes.
occasion, which always do. Um, and then I can see that, oh, this person managed these things this way, and so perhaps I can do that too. And this is how they tackle certain situations where they were getting into this mommy guilt race. So I think finding a mentor is critical uh, to your
Yeah.
success. Yeah, in really any realm, I want to say.
I love that. The way I like to say it is like relatable role models, right? Like,
Yep, exactly. Relatable
yeah,
role models. Yeah.
sometimes it's the mentor, and we're very lucky sometimes, and we find that person, and it works out. A lot of times, they may be far from you geographically, physically, or even industry wise, and they might not be able to mentor you. But really, just following them has, in the last 3 4 years, like just following people that I would like to be like,
Hmm.
has helped me a lot. Is that in sense that I'm just following you. Like I'm just looking at your career. I'm looking at how you're doing this or that. And, platforms like this, and even Pink Careers doing all the webinars that you guys do and all the activities that you guys put together. That's kind of what we're trying to show people, is that like if Richa can do it, if Prasha can do it, like you can do it. Like,
Exactly.
that's kind of what the whole intent is of all the work that we're all doing, right?
Yeah, there's like a famous quote by Chelsea Clinton, and she said that you like if you don't have women, they. I'm kind of paraphrasing her quote, but essentially it was of the order that we have to find relatable role models if you want to succeed, and
Absolutely.
women have a hard time succeeding because they don't find those relatable
Yeah.
role
Yeah.
models. And I think that's what Pink Careers is trying to do, and you are trying to do here with your platform, is to bring those very straightforward advice, and like the real advice, I want to
Yes.
say, right? It's not made up. And
Lived.
another
Yeah. Lived advice.
lived advice. And then the other thing that I would say is on this guilt piece, like stop following all these picture perfect Instagram feeds that you see of working mommies, if there are any. Like I don't have any on my feed, so uh, you know,
Boundaries. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
we have this FOMO that gets attached then, that hey, I'm missing out on doing all these fun activities because I'm working, so maybe I should not be working, or I'm missing out on climbing up in my career because I'm spending time with my kids. Like all this guilt, FOMO, all of that has been exaggerated by social media. So I
Yeah,
get into the trap every once in a while, but then
we
I
all do.
try to get away from it consciously.
Yeah, you got to create those boundaries. We can have an entire like episode, course, mastermind. Like
Oh
we could build
yeah.
an empire and just try and talk about boundaries and how to create those.
I'm
Um, yeah, but it's hard, and it starts with, really, as you said, like surrounding yourself with the right people, spending time with like things that you want to be, not
mhm.
things that somebody else wants to be, and not something that somebody else told you should be, right? Like, and then, I think there is so much responsibility that falls on our shoulders to take care of our life and career and success. And for a very long time, we have been told what to do, that
Mhm.
now we've forgotten that, this is a choice. Everything is a choice. Like,
Everything is a
if you want to
choice.
do this, it's a choice. If you want to do that, it's a choice. But getting that choice back, is really really important. And then from there you can say, okay, I have taken charge of this area of my life and this area of my life. And that's exactly why we are all here. So with that, coming back to sort of your story, tell us, what is your superpower?
Um, I think my superpower is that I am not afraid to ask. So if I need something, I ask. If I think I'm ready for a promotion, I'm going to ask. And if I think that I'm ready to take on more responsibility and more money, then I will ask. If I need help, I ask. When I had
Yeah.
my first kid, I was working full time. I was going to MBA full time, and I asked for help. And Indian parents are wonderful. They come
Yeah.
at months at end to help out, but then I had help in other ways as well, right? So you got to ask. And I think women really struggle with this, with asking more often than men do.
Mhm.
So we have to kind of remember that we cannot do things alone. We shouldn't be doing things alone
Yeah.
because it's not in our best interest. It's not in anybody's best interest. So if you ask, people will help, and
Yeah.
people will give you what you need.
And I think it's a great way to pave the path for others, because this story about Sheryl Sandberg asking for the spot when she was pregnant, the parking spot, and how that created this new culture, new policy, if you will,
Mhm.
to treat pregnant women in a certain way at Google. I think this one ask can affect so many lives, and you just do not know. And then you are breaking the stereotype every time you do it, and
Mhm.
you're creating space for another person. Like, you know, even like when women work too hard and stay at the office till like 10 p.m. or whatever, don't do it, because when you're doing it, you're setting the precedent for the next person who may not be able to fill in those shoes. So like your behavior, your the way you conduct yourself, if you ask for things, you are helping the entire community, like every action. And I love that. Don't do it alone. Like that has been a game changer for me. Absolutely. Like I don't want to. Like, why would you want a life that's just you doing all the stuff? Like,
Yeah, you should say no and ask for help for anything that you don't want to do, that you shouldn't be doing, right? And that you mustn't do, essentially.
yeah, I love
So,
that. So I ask this to everybody, and I would love to know, what is your favorite book?
oh, my favorite, all-time favorite book is by Dr. Louis Frankel. It's called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office.
Hmm.
It's an old book. I think it's probably 20 years old at this point, and I probably read it 5 years ago. But it covers 101 lessons, 101 things that women do to self-sabotage their career, including things like saying too much sorry and starting their voicemail by, hey, I'm sorry, I'm out of office, but can I call you back? I mean, why you are sorry that you're out of office. And so when I read that book, actually, this particular point about saying sorry too much, I went back to my emails and saw I actually did say sorry too much.
Yeah,
And so that then you start becoming more conscious about it, and now my emails have no sorry if I'm actually not sorry about something. So I think that is my all-time favorite book that I really urge everybody to read.
I love that. And then before we let you go, tell us, where can people find you? How can they support your work? And where do you share these with wisdom nuggets more regularly?
So people can find us and what we do at pinkcareers.com. Our mission is to close the gender gap in the C-suite, like Prasha mentioned in the beginning. You mentioned by sharing straightforward advice and bringing career coaching to early career women. Like we strongly believe that when you bring coaching and that structured feedback to early career women, they can build stronger foundations and can multifold their confidence and really grow in their career. So one of the things that we do at Pink Careers is our bi-weekly career webinars that are free to attend. Anybody can attend those, and we cover really a variety of topics around how you can own your career. So I highly, highly encourage everybody to check those out at pinkcareers.com. And then people can connect with me on Instagram. We are at Pink Careers _. And then we are on LinkedIn as well. So if you search by Pink Careers, then you will find us on LinkedIn as well.
I love that. Thank you so much, Richa, for sharing such amazing advice, and for just being your authentic self in all that you do. It definitely shows. And congratulations for such an amazing career so far. And I know you're going to do amazing things going forward too.
Thank you, Prasha. Thank you for having me.
Ah, and that was Richa with her amazing STEM story. Please join us next week to listen to another amazing STEM story, and use the links in the bio and in the episode notes to follow Richa and her amazing, amazing work. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.